This is a message to the remnant of God in Nigeria. The title is The Faithful 7,000 in Israel. Where are they? The faithful 7,000 in Israel. Where are they? If there is one account in the Bible that Nigerian Christians relish and gleefully share, it is the story of Elijah in the presence of God at Mount Horeb. In that encounter, Elijah lamented before God that he was the only one left of the prophets in Israel, and God had to correct him, that the Most High still had 7,000 faithful men who refused to bow the knees to Baal. It was clear that God was very proud of them. These were the remnants in the land. Every country has them. Nigerian Christians too are proud of them. With the benefit of insight, it is cause for serious concern to notice that the 7,000 strong army of the Lord made no visible impact in the land. As a matter of fact, by the time Elijah came out of hibernation, some of the servants of the Lord were hiding in caves, fed with bread and water by Obadiah, the servant of the king. Granted then, there was no visible spiritual leadership in the land, but when Elijah returned from his sojourn by the brook Cherith and in Zarephath, they will have heard that Elijah was back. Obadiah will have told them when he took their next meal to them. Why did they not come out? Please try and imagine what should have happened in Israel on the day that Elijah encountered the 850 false prophets of Baal and the groves on Mount Carmel. 450 prophets of Baal, 400 prophets of the groves, making 850. Elijah was the only prophet who stood for the Lord. He was the only one. Meanwhile, God had 7,000 faithful men in Israel, and some were hiding in caves. Satan had only 850 false prophets who were bold to stand for the devil, while God had 7,000 men who were afraid to come out and stand for God. No wonder the revival lasted only one day. One day. That spectacular revival lasted only one day. One of the most wonderful interventions of God on earth could not be sustained beyond one day because the faithful men were hiding. There were more righteous people in the land than the wicked. However, while the wicked were bold to stand to defend their wickedness, the righteous were too timid to defend their righteousness. The same situation seems to be repeating itself today in the church. Elijah prayed a 25-second prayer, and fire fell from God in broad daylight. Israel fell to its knees and proclaimed, "The Lord, He is the God. The Lord, He is the God." The revival had started. Unfortunately, the army of the Lord that was meant to carry the revival fire was nowhere to be seen. They were hiding. The revival did not go beyond one day. Even if God should send down fire today into Nigeria, the people who are supposed to carry it, where are they? Imagine what will have happened if 7,000 men had stood behind Elijah as he entered into Jezreel, would Jezebel have been able to intimidate him? Even if Elijah wanted to run after hearing Jezebel speak, it would have been impossible, because he will have had to go through 7,000 men standing behind him. Elijah himself will have been compelled to stand. On that day, the evil throne of Ahab and Jezebel could have been overthrown, and a faithful leader could have risen in the land, and the two kingdoms could have been reunited under the reign of Jehovah. Unfortunately, the faithful remnants were hiding in caves, waiting for bread and water. Consequently, the northern kingdoms existed for a total of 290 years and had 19 kings. Not one of them was godly. No, not one. They were all evil. They all worshipped the calf set up by Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, at Bethel and Dan. Eventually, after 290 years and 19 kings, God had no other option but to destroy the nation and scatter the people. Till today, no one knows where they are on earth. They are still here. Their descendants are still here. But no one knows where they are on earth. Their presence and identity was completely obliterated by God. Completely, God wiped them out. The question then is, of what use are the remnants if they cannot stand for truth and righteousness? If the faithfulness of the remnant is only demonstrated inside his closet, then of what use is his faithfulness to God? Is the faithfulness of the remnant required inside his closet? Jesus said, "No one lights a candle and puts it and hides it under a bushel, but places it on a stand to provide light for people." Is remnant still considered remnant if his light is not shining? Is remnant still considered faithful if his light is shining only for himself and not to confront the darkness that is engulfing the world? I am asking these questions because some Christians in Nigeria confirm there are remnants in the land. Thank God they are there. Among them are the intercessors who are faithfully praying. They are doing their part. But is it only prayers the remnants are called upon to do? We also have remnants in the banking industry. They are there. Honest, God-fearing men and women who will never steal, they will never lie, they will never cheat. They are in the banking industry. Remnants, followers of Jesus Christ. They are in the legal profession. They are in the security units. They are all over the marketplace. They are in the universities. They are in the health sector. Now listen to this. Even amongst the politicians, there are remnants. Faithful, God-fearing men and women amongst the politicians. They are there. They are in the Senate. They are in the House of Rep. They are there. They are amongst the governors. They are there. Remnants. There are faithful ones in this country who have never bowed the knees to Baal nor kissed it with their mouth. But where are they when the land is in distress? Where are the remnants in the other spheres of the society? The intercessors are doing their work. Where are the others? Of what use are the remnants when evil has multiplied in the land? Jesus Christ asks, of what use is salt when it has lost its savour? Where were the remnants when charlatans and scoundrels took over the sanctuary of God? Where were the remnants when in the household of God in Nigeria, election was shamelessly rigged and delegates were stupendously bribed to vote illegitimate candidate to sit in the sanctuary of the Most High? Where were the remnants when the image that provoked to jealousy was set up in the temple? In Hosea chapter 8 verse 4, God laments, and I quote, "They have set up kings, but not by me. They have made princes, and I knew it not." Those who rig elections cannot claim to be ordained by God. I say that again. Those who rig elections cannot claim that God ordained them to hold office. It is not right for a man to seek to impose himself on God. It is God who chooses his man. Allow God to choose his man. Asking for peace without instituting righteousness is making mockery of God and his moral and spiritual standards. There can be no peace without righteousness. Isaiah chapter 32 verse 17 makes it clear that the effect of righteousness is peace. The end of righteousness is peace. If Christians want peace, they must return to righteousness. There are too many evils going on in the land. The remnants should speak up now. Inside the church, they should speak for truth and speak for righteousness. There is a saying that as the church goes, so goes the nation. The church must stand in righteousness for the nation to receive healing. The remnants should organize themselves wherever they are, come together and speak for truth and righteousness. In the banking industry, they should organize. In the legal profession, they should organize and advocate for truth and righteousness. In the security units, universities, in the marketplace, as well as in politics, the remnants should organize, come together, boldly come forth, organize and promote truth and righteousness. It is not sufficient to only pray for God to come and help. It is not sufficient. Faith without works is dead. If God has to come to sort out the problems in the Nigerian church, if the Most High has to come and do it himself, all of us Christians will be very, very unhappy. We can only pray that God will have mercy and give us more time and steer people who are supposed to speak to do so. There are people who are supposed to speak who are keeping quiet. They need to speak to prompt those who are supposed to act so that those ones can take the right action. We better sort this situation out ourselves. God warned in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 31 that if we will judge ourselves, he will not judge us. If we wait for him to come and judge us, we will be very, very unhappy. Now, we move to part 2 of this short message. Why were the remnants hiding in the caves? Why were they hiding? Under King Ahab, the remnants were afraid of being smitten with the sword. In our generation, the remnant is not afraid of being smitten with the sword. They are afraid of being smitten by tongues of men. The Nigerian remnant is not afraid of being killed. He is afraid of losing reputation, recognition, advantage amongst men. That is the problem. The average remnant that is hiding, that is keeping quiet, even though they see all the abominations going on in the church, they are not speaking because they don't want to lose reputation. They don't want to lose recognition and advantage amongst men. A Christian brother once told me that he spent a long time building a good reputation for himself, and he does not want to lose it by getting involved in this thing you are doing. A sister wrote and said, no one wants to get involved in what you people are doing. And what are we doing? What are we doing? We are simply speaking the truth and resisting unrighteousness in the body of Christ. That is all we are doing. So far, since we have been doing it, no one has been able to come out and say you are telling a lie. No one. We are speaking the truth and we are saying unrighteousness should not be inside the church. The remnants, they are the people who spoke are part of the remnants. But they object. Why? If they join, they will lose reputation. They will lose recognition. All the people objecting are considered part of the remnants. Unfortunately, the remnants of today, like the remnants in the Old Testament, they carefully choose the battle that they will fight for the Lord. They choose the one they will fight. They choose the one they will not fight. They are soldiers who tell their commanding officer the battle they will engage and the one they will not engage. If the battle is such that it will affect their reputation and recognition and respect amongst men, the remnants, they will not touch it. The Nigerian remnants don't want men to call them bad people. So they give room for evil to thrive in the church, which now spills over into the land. They multiply faith without works, forgetting that faith without works is dead. They keep quiet when they should speak, silent when they should rebuke. Consequently, evil continues to gallop in the church and in the land, unchallenged, unhindered. Evil keeps galloping forward and multiplying itself without measure. Elijah was so sure he was the only one left of the prophets of the Lord. He was so sure that fire will fall from heaven in broad daylight. No servant of God will come out to acknowledge this is Jehovah. Meanwhile, the people had fallen on their knees, shouting the Lord, He is the God. He is the God. And no other servant of God showed up. Elijah said, I am the only one left. It had to take God. Only God could have persuaded Elijah that there were other 7,000 faithful in Israel. But they were hiding. I pray that this will not be the case of the Nigerian church. The remnants must come out of hiding. There is work to be done. There are two things the remnant should remember. Two things. Number one, it is God who gives a man good name. It is God. You cannot give yourself good reputation. It is God who gives a man good name. Genesis chapter 11 tells us of men who gathered And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, and make us a name. God said, what? You will make yourself a name without me? God came down and scattered them. Till today, no responsible parent will name his child Nimrod. Nor will any responsible set of people call their community Babel. Meanwhile, in Genesis chapter 12, just flip over from Genesis chapter 11 to Genesis chapter 12. God now called a man. The man who was simply minding his business. God called him, say, come, I will make you a great name. Till today, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, 3 major religions are all striving to claim we are the descendants of that man. Parents are falling over themselves to name their sons Abraham after that man. It is God who gives a man good reputation. Your responsibility is to do the will of God. The responsibility of the remnant is to obey God. God says, them that sin, rebuke before all, that others also may fear. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 20. The responsibility of the remnant is to do the will of God. It is God who gives reputation. Point number 2. If the remnants in Nigeria claim Jesus as Lord, they should remember that the master himself made himself of no reputation. And because he made himself of no reputation, God highly exalted him and gave him a name above every other name. It is God who gives a man good reputation. Anyone who approaches God with the mindset of keeping his reputation will lose it. He who keeps his life will lose it. Mark chapter 8, verse 35. Remember also the word of the Lord, that whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed, when he cometh in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. Mark chapter 8, verse 38. Why am I saying all this? Nigerian remnants should not be timid like the 7,000 in Israel, who, though they neither bowed the knees to Baal nor kissed it with their mouth, they did not make any visible impact in their generation. The northern kingdom of Israel was totally wiped out. Meanwhile, at a point, it had 7,000 faithful men. It is not wisdom in quote. It is not wisdom in quote to keep quiet when evil is multiplying in the church and in the land. It is not wisdom to keep quiet when hypocrites are now parading themselves openly in the sanctuary of the Most High. Remnant, you cannot keep quiet. You have to speak up. Do not permit evil to intimidate you. God has not given you the spirit of fear. These things that I am saying are to encourage the remnant to be bold and stand for God in their generation. This message is meant to encourage, not to condemn. Evil seeks to intimidate the righteous so that it can have its way. Do not permit evil to intimidate you. Greater is he who lives in you than he that is in the world. It is time for the manifestation of the sons of God. Organize yourselves and stand for truth and righteousness at whatever sphere that God has placed you. You will discover that the only battle you really need to fight is the battle for truth and righteousness inside the church. Once the church is in right standing with God, Nigeria is delivered. I say that again. Once the church is in right standing with God, Nigeria is delivered. The problem is inside the church. The solution is in the hands of the Christians. God bless you. God bless Nigeria. Thank you.